I'm Laura, Dine Million. I am a journalist and writer and a friend of Shay's, and I'm so happy to be here with Shea Andreone about her beautiful new book called Carry On, True Stories of the Wonder and Heartbreak of Trying to Start a Family. She is an activist and a mom and a writer of this beautiful book of stories about people on their journey to become parents. Next to Shea is Shayla the Artist. I love saying that. Are we just going to do that all night? Shayla the Artist.
You can call me Shayla if you'd like.
Shayla is an artist and a singer and a songwriter and a women's reproductive health advocate. She holds a master's degree in healthcare management and recently launched Power Box, where she shares information.
First edition of What's Cooking in Guyana.
My next book, What's Cooking
in
Guyana. And then next to her is Abbe Feder, founder of In-Circle Fertility and the host of podcast Women's Wellness with Abbe Feder. And Felicia Andrews is a licensed and clinical social worker who specializes in maternal mental health here in Los Angeles. She has a private practice and is also a therapist for perinatal patients in the maternal mental health intensive outpatient program at UCLA.
Wonderful.
So thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm going to start by asking Shea some questions and then bring the rest of the panel in, and then there will be time for questions, and please speak up if you have any comments or questions. So Shea, let's just start by saying that this is a beautiful book. It's really a masterpiece. It is a 15-chapter book of 15 different stories of real people and their journeys, and every one of them you feel like you are absolutely inside their house, inside their whole experience, and I don't know how you did that, but it is a very personal feeling. You get the sense of their personalities, their relationships, and the whole journey. It can be intense and it can be great. So if you could just start with telling us about your own unique journey and how you got here, how this book was born.
First of all, thank you. I have to give credit where credit is due, because the reason why I wrote this book was obviously it came out of a very unfortunate situation that had a happy ending in the end, and all is good. But I had a very hard time trying to start a family, and it all started in the emergency room, and every time things started to get better, it got worse again, and then it got better eventually, and resulted. For me, my first pregnancy was a happy, healthy baby girl. But the journey there was just unbelievable. It sounds like there are too many things to put into one pregnancy. It was just hard to conceive, and then an incident in the emergency room, and then finding out I was pregnant but being told it was not going to stick, and then having incredible pain, and then having incredible nausea and reaction to medication, and on and on and on. The second time that I got pregnant after all that, because I was crazy to try to do it again, but I did, ended up sadly in a miscarriage, which it is now determined that miscarriage was caused by the medication I was given to try to keep food down and not vomit through the pregnancy. And I lost that baby close to the 12th week of pregnancy. And when I did, I called the only person in the world I knew that had also miscarried in the 11th week of pregnancy, but several times, and that was you. And I remember you answering the phone so cheery, and I was like, "It's not Jay!" But I reached out to her because she was the only person in the world who I knew would understand exactly what I was feeling in that moment. And that began to plant a little seed in the back of my head that became this book. because without talking to Laura, I wouldn't have realized that people who feel like this are not just the two of us, but many, many people. And that there were some universal themes the more I talked to one person and the next person and the next person, where they took on a creative habit or a project or a goal of something that they could do that they had control over in their life. So I thought that was sewing story, but instead I'm going to read a chapter that deals with something I know that some people in the room are either dealing with or have dealt with. And also, I chose to read this section because I wanted to give a little light to what some of the men feel in this situation, because I don't think, I feel like when we go through any of this, we are deer in headlights on our own, right? But they have no idea, and they're feeling something, but they're just a little bit lost as well. And so I just wanted to incorporate a little bit of that. Zoe grabbed Sean's hand and noticed the expression on his face. His eyes were wide, and she could tell that he wasn't fully grasping what was happening. The news wasn't something he'd considered a possibility in the same way she had. Zoe had felt a pang that morning, a reminder that she could be disappointed by the appointment. But she swallowed back her thoughts. She didn't want to think negatively for no reason. She wanted to say all of this to Sean and just sob in his arms. She wanted to hold him, to soften the blow to his heart, but she too was paralyzed by her own. As soon as reality set in, the doctor's presence in the room became unwelcome. Their grief was too intimate for a third wheel, and yet the doctor couldn't just walk out. She had to explain to Zoe that she would likely miscarry the baby over the next few weeks, and what else Zoe should expect. She explained that Zoe's body would still feel pregnant until she began to bleed, and that if they wanted to try again, they should wait for at least 2 menstrual cycles. Zoe could process only part of what she was told and figured she'd worry about the details later. Later that night, once they arrived home from the appointment, Sean and Zoe did their best to keep it together for Millie. Zoe made her a fried egg and toast with peas for dinner. That's about all she could come up with after the day's news. She just wanted to get to her bed so she could fall apart. Zoe told herself that she would take the night to feel crappy about it, maybe tomorrow too, but she wanted to look ahead after that. Tons of women have miscarriages early on and then get pregnant again and have healthy babies. It's common, and Zoe was trying to remind herself of that, but it wasn't making her feel any better. At bedtime, Sean read Millie Nuffle Bunny their nightly ritual. Occasionally, Millie would request the second or the third book in the series, and most nights Sean would oblige and read all of the voices. When Trixie went boneless in the story, Millie would reenact the tantrum while Sean pretended to pick her up. Tonight, Zoe watched her little family. She thought about joining Millie on the floor and lying boneless, if she could muster up the energy to move. She hoped to be able to add to her family, but for the moment, she focused on what was right in front of her. She looked up Mo Willems, the author of Nuffle Bunny, on her phone and learned that Trixie was the name of his daughter. There was no mention of another child. Zoe wondered if that was a choice or if their family had also gone through what she was experiencing. Millie did not fall asleep easily. Sleep wasn't something that she ever needed the way that other children did. Napping caused way too much stress to even try to enforce, and bedtime required Sean or Zoe to lie down next to her. Zoe took the position that night and curled up next to Millie. She pulled her in, tucking Millie's head right under her chin. She inhaled, reaching her face to the top of Millie's head, smelling the combination of shampoo and Play-Doh. She couldn't seem to get close enough to her. Zoe had tears in her eyes as she hugged her child to sleep. It took what seemed like a miracle, that every cell came together in just the right order, that every organ grew to function, and that every muscle grew in just the right place. Zoe was not a religious person, but she held Millie and thought, this is what it feels like to be blessed. Mm-hmm.
Shayla, could you give us a little bit of your story and what you are up to right now that brought you to what you're up to right now?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shea, for inviting me. So I have not yet had my miracle baby. My husband and I have been trying to have a child since we got married. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. I've had 3 ectopic pregnancies and 1 chemical pregnancy. When we first found out I got pregnant with the first one, we were just so excited. The only thing you think about is, okay, I'm pregnant, going to the doctor, we're going to see the baby in the ultrasound, everything's going to be amazing. And then we weren't able to see anything in the ultrasound, and I'd go back to the doctor like every week just to see. Didn't see anything. The physician would tell us, maybe it's still too early, just keep coming back. I never even, at the time, I didn't even know what an ectopic pregnancy was. No one had ever explained any of this to me. When you're younger, you're in school and they have like the sex education or the sex talk, but no one goes over like pregnancy and all the different scenarios that could potentially happen. So an ectopic pregnancy was a complete mystery to us. But we went on the internet, looked it up, tried to figure it out really, because my physician at the time didn't really give me much information. So my 3rd ectopic pregnancy was when I had to have emergency surgery and I lost both of my fallopian tubes. So where I am right now is my only chance at having a biological child is IVF. We've tried 1 round of IVF that was unsuccessful, and we do plan to do that again. We remain hopeful. With going through this, it has opened up so much for me, emotionally, physically. It's brought my husband and I closer together, and it's actually created some amazing projects have come out of it. When I've been singing for about 15 years. Singing was something that I just kind of kept to myself, just singing around the house. When I was a kid, I would make up commercials. But I knew that it brought me joy. It was fun to do. But when we were going through our fertility struggles, that's when I decided I'm going to share this with the world, share my gift with the world. And it actually is something that it gave me the courage to share it, really. Singing is a creative outlet for me. I've released 2 albums, and I'm working on my 3rd. And I've started a podcast that called Power Box, where my focus is reproductive health and wellness. And who knows what's next for me, but I'm just going to keep moving, right? And I will keep my faith and keep my hope that I'm going to have my miracle baby one day. But I'm very excited about where I am right now, because I've had a chance to meet amazing people along the way, and I'm part of this beautiful community of women that are supportive. And when I do have my miracle baby, I will forever be a part of that family. I will not be exempt from that. I will keep moving along with them and advocating. And I'm truly excited and blessed.
Why don't we just keep on moving down so we can get everyone introduced, and then we can keep on going to Abbe. You wanna?
Yeah.
Sing?
Oh, God. I almost don't want you to listen to my story. I did 8 rounds of IVF. It's not going to happen to you. I'm Abbe Feder. I won't really lead with that, but I did go through infertility for 6 years. I am on the other side. I have 6-year-old twins. They're boy-girl twins. I can't tell you how many times people see us on the street and they're like, "Oh my God, one and done. You're so lucky." And I'm like, $200,000, 8 rounds of IVF, but totally. Or they'll see my husband and be like, "Hey man, you must have super sperm." And I'm like, "Okay." Anyway, this is some of the insanity that we deal with when we're going through pregnancy loss and infertility, and people, the most well-meaning people, our loved ones, just don't know the right thing to say. So given that my kids are 6 and I had 6 years of infertility, we really started this journey 12, almost 13 years ago, which was a very different world. Every year, the world of IVF advances and there's new things. And we're talking about it and we're doing amazing events like this. But when I started, we were not. And my husband and I were so grief-stricken. I always say that infertility it's like waking up with a daily grief because you are mourning the loss of what you thought your life would look like by now, and the loss of what may never be, the loss of what is at this moment that you thought would be different. And so after a few years and a few rounds of treatment, my husband and I started a podcast. This was before the podcast revolution. There were no podcasts about infertility out there. We didn't know it was going to be a podcast. We basically couldn't find a great therapist. Our family was driving us insane. No friend was being there enough for us. They tried, believe me. And so we just grabbed a recorder and we were like, this is going to be our default therapist. And we recorded our fights and my shots and the doctor's appointments, and it ended up becoming almost a documentary style podcast of our last 3 rounds of IVF. And it's called Immaculate Conception as opposed to Immaculate Conception. I sometimes feel like I have to say that because people are like, I don't understand. You guys got it. We're at Booksoup. You guys got it. And that podcast actually came out about 5 weeks before my twins came, which was very surreal because then I started getting all these notes from people around the world telling me that they were rooting for me and and it ends in a cliffhanger. We're told we're never going to have babies, and it comes back with the end 6 episodes, which is when we also had 1 loss and 1 ectopic. We had to do a reduction. Anyway, I digress. But the point is that podcast really started the conversation in many infertility communities. And so women started reaching out to me, and I felt like there was this gap. I had everything besides the $200,000 that one could want to do IVF, right? I had a supportive family. I had health insurance. I present as white. I'm in a cisgendered hetero relation. Like, it's as normal as one might decide normal is. And I still felt like there was this gap, this person I wanted to shepherd me through the process. And so I decided that that's what I was going to do. And so after I gave birth, I started my company called In Circle Fertility. I wasn't sure what it was going to be, and it continues to evolve, but it now is holding the hearts and hands of women and couples going through this. I also loved the podcast world, so I switched a little, once we had babies in my podcast, there was no more podcast there. And so we got our happy ending, and I started Women's Wellness with Abbe Feder, mostly about reproductive health, but I meet so many people in this field. People are doing embryo, cell testing and things you've never, like up in a tree upside down, I just want to interview everyone that's involved in this process. And so that is where I am now. It's a long way to say that. Should I go next?
I'll share a little bit about my own both personal and professional story. So I'm Felicia, and I became a therapist I went to grad school in 2010 and started practicing as a therapist in 2012, and have worked with all sorts of different populations, ranging from adults with pretty severe mental health issues to women who have just given birth and are really struggling with postpartum depression, which is really a lot of what I focus on now. When I started to
contemplate having my own family, I didn't really know, what that would really look like. And what ended up happening for me and what my story ended up looking like was just that I found that I struggled to get pregnant. And I didn't have any pregnancy losses, but I couldn't get pregnant. And I had that experience for about 2 years and, had lots of medical tests and things like that. And, kind of the diagnosis was unexplained infertility, never any answers to that. And still really no answers to this day. And in the end, I was able to have kids and ended up getting fertility treatments. But that was kind of my window into fertility challenges in this community, and getting a little bit of the experience of what it's like to want something so badly and to feel so desperate and to feel lonely and lost and really sensitive and to think about it all the time and to feel anxious and to feel scared and wanting to learn more about how to work with people in the therapy world on that. So I studied it a little bit more so I could do that in my practice as a therapist. And now as a therapist, I work with people who are experiencing fertility challenges, whatever that looks like for them. And now that I do specialize in postpartum challenges, I have learned that the 10% of people who do experience fertility challenges do end up having a higher risk for postpartum depression or anxiety as well. So it is also something that we're always on the lookout for. And it's really important to me to educate families that I'm working with, whether it's a couple or whether it's the birthing parent, on things that they can do because there are such effective treatments for perinatal mental health issues. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. And I think as everyone has talked about their experiences that they've gone through, we have our friends and we have our families, and there's a lot of information out there. And then there are actual mental health struggles that people end up going through. And it's so incredibly painful and there's so much suffering. And it is really important to make sure that people are getting the treatment that they need to be getting, whether they're experiencing a diagnosable mental health issue or they just need to be talking to someone who's licensed about whatever they're going through. So I like to do a lot of group therapy and also just individual therapy to make sure that people are getting the support that they need, because it is so incredibly painful to be walking around when you are facing this kind of these daily feelings that you might not really know what to do with. So I think also couples therapy can be really helpful as well too. But I think a lot of couples come out so much stronger, and the resilience that I see in people is so inspiring. And that's, I think, one of my favorite things about Shea's book. It's like the resilience in all of the stories. And no matter what ends up happening to anyone in their story, they get to come out of it with this strength that they can do whatever they are meant to be doing and handle that. And I think that's just amazing. It's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody.
I want to just sort of reiterate how I think lonely the experience can feel. My first miscarriage was 18 years ago when I felt like I was in the back alley of the internet finding somebody to talk to. There weren't that many people. I had a what's called a molar pregnancy, which is a condition that can turn into cancer and so I had to go back to my OB very regularly, and be monitored very closely, which meant I was in the OB's office every week with all the pregnant ladies. I mean, it was just like for quite a while. But I did find a little group of November molar pregnancies, and that was sort of my lifeline for a good, certainly the 3 months when I was most closely being watched. And I never became friends with any of them, but I'm actually still Facebook friends with them. So I actually do see their resulting pregnancies or resulting families, which is really sort of special. But I'm so happy to hear about everything that's happening now, because that would have been so lovely. I mean, I did go out and find a therapist, but didn't really connect, and just, but the things that are there now, it's so nice to hear that, that there are podcasts, that there are books. I mean, it was the most random little book that I found that I could read about somebody's miscarriages. I just remember feeling like I'd go home after work, have a cry, because I would schedule that I wasn't going to cry at work, but when I got home, I was allowed to cry. So I'd cry, and then I'd read my little book, and then I'd check my, it wasn't this sad, but there were some really sad and very lonely days. So this sounds much better, and I was struck today. I was still, though, trying to sort of do some Googling about the latest stats on miscarriage, and I kept on getting to my latest demographic, which is perimenopause. And I was like, wow, we are loud and proud now. So I feel like now I hope to feel that maybe it's not quite as lonely, not quite as like hush hush as it was before. So that's a really great feeling. But I would like to sort of hear from some, as everyone spoke about, and Felicia, thank you so much, that everyone's sort of mental health as you're going through. I think it's very easy for people and friends and doctors to say the wrong thing. I had a doctor tell me to stop researching during my molar pregnancy. You're talking to a journalist. What else am I supposed to do right now? And then three miscarriages later, I had a fertility specialist doctor tell me he wasn't impressed by my number of miscarriages. Which these are things, they were saying things that I do believe they meant with some love and some feeling of, you are going to be okay. But at the time, it doesn't feel like it, and it doesn't feel like the right thing to say. So if we can talk a little bit about everyone, sort of mental health and what you have been doing for yourself and what you see as the ideal support system.
Do you want to start?
I mean, you started us off a bit. Yeah. So what would be the ideal mental health support system that you would see?
I mean, I think it just depends. Everyone is so different. I think you have to kind of look at yourself and know yourself and what you need. So you want your natural support system, which is like friends and family, whether that's a chosen family or your, biological family. And, that's like your close, intimate support. So people you can actually talk to about intimate things. And hopefully there are people that you can talk to about how you're really feeling. And I think a really important thing is telling people how you want to be supported. And I think everyone remembers the things that people said that were hurtful, like that comment the doctor made to you. And the thing is, we're all so unique in terms of things that hurt and don't hurt too. Because I had a friend that told me, I know just how you're feeling, which that's not even really that bad of a thing to say. And it really bothered me. Because I was like, you don't know just how I'm feeling. So it just goes to show we're all so different, So it can be really helpful to tell people, this is how I want to be supported, and maybe even this isn't helpful. So if you do have a few people you can say that to, that can be really helpful. And then, also just having friends you can spend time with that can kind of be a distraction when you do need that, and then having acquaintances you can be around, having activities that you enjoy, planning activities to do so that you have things to do when you don't feel like it, things that you're committed to doing that get you out of the house when you don't feel like it. Activity planning and scheduling is really important, because a lot of times if we're feeling down, we don't feel like doing something, we don't feel motivated to do it. And so just getting yourself committed so you have that outer accountability to show up even when you don't feel like it can be really helpful. some sort of physical activity can be really helpful as well. I think that sometimes it's appropriate to take psychotropic medication if needed to see a psychiatrist. There's a lot of misinformation on what is safe, and even though it's not in my scope of practice to talk about medication completely, I can at least say that it is safe to take medication when you're pregnant. So there's basically one medication you can't take when you're pregnant, and it's an antipsychotic medication for a psychotic disorder. So otherwise, you can basically take any medication when you're pregnant, and you can talk to a reproductive psychiatrist about that in detail. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. But if needed, talk to a psychiatrist about that, and see a therapist or go to group therapy as well if needed. But I think checking in with yourself and being honest with yourself, because I just think a lot of times we're not quite honest with ourselves about how we're really feeling. And it's kind of easy to white knuckle things and just kind of say to yourself, like, it's not that bad. At least whatever, at least I have a safe place to live, or at least I have a job, or I'll survive until and then you have that marker that you're waiting for, and you're just trying to get to that point, and you're just kind of going through the motions until you get to that point. So trying to be present in what is actually happening and trying to get the skills in place to do that can be really helpful, because you are living in right now. And even when you don't like whatever is happening right now, you're still here. So finding a way to deal with that moment and making it meaningful and being willing to be there is really important. And there are skills to do that if you don't have those skills. So I think that can be really helpful.
What she said. Yeah, I agree with so much of that. I always, we always say it takes a village to raise a baby. I say it takes a village to make a baby. I wish that everybody had, I mean, my village was large. My village to make my baby was larger than my village to raise my children. But I want everybody to have access to a therapist and a coach and an acupuncturist and a doctor that they love. So many women that I coach are like, I don't need to switch my doctor. He's so invested at this point. That's why they stay. And having gone to multiple clinics and multiple doctors, having one that's actually your cheerleader, it makes such a huge difference. So not settling for things. I think it is much like Felicia said, when you can articulate what you need and ask for what you want, it's such a blessing. Sometimes in the disarray of infertility, that's a very hard thing to do. So having your people that are your cheerleaders and also majorly blocking out the people who are not. I think, the word boundaries gets a little bit of an eye roll lately because everybody's like, your boundaries. But truly what a boundary sometimes meant for me, at least, and what I would recommend to some of my clients is really only going to places and hanging out with people that make you feel good, uplifted, that do not deplete you. It doesn't mean it'll be forever, but if you need to make a break with somebody now, or whatever the now is for you, I'm all for it. And then a very small practical thing that I always say is that salt is a cure for everything. So either sweat it out, cry it out, go to the ocean, or take an Epsom bath. And whatever mood I'm in, and if I need to be in another, that is like my quick change. So salt's cure is my pro tip.
I thought you were going to say salty potato chips.
Also, I'm adding that one. Good one. Salt and vinegar, especially. Yeah.
What she said and what she said. But as I mentioned, singing, that's my outlet. Being part of something like this, saying yes, to things, to get outside of my head is important. Outside of singing and songwriting, I also work in healthcare, in risk management and patient safety. So I hear a lot. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to balance because I am an advocate for women's reproductive health, but also, the healthcare industry there's a lot going on in there. And so I have my own experience, and then just from the patients that tell their stories. When I was experiencing my second ectopic pregnancy, I remember feeling very confused and very low. My energy levels were they were dropping. And I went to my OB about it. And I said, I don't really know what's going on, but I don't feel myself. And what she told me was, it's a bit unusual for someone to feel depressed after an ectopic pregnancy. So I looked at her and I was just kind of like, okay, I need to find a new OB, right? So as you mentioned, it's important to find someone who advocates for you and listens to you. If you do not connect with your doctor, find a new one. And it's easier said than done, but it can be difficult. But I have scoured the internet. I've gone to appointments, and then if I just don't feel good about that appointment, I will switch. But there's a lot of people out here who they feel like they need the permission to do it. You know what I'm saying? You need permission to advocate for yourself. But it's so important to do that. I make time for myself. I keep moving because that's very important as well. I'm all about the whole body health. As long as you keep your body moving, keep your blood flowing, you will feel better. There's been many a times where I feel like I just can't even get out of bed, but being brave is very important. Sharing your experiences, speaking with others, finding your people, finding your community is very important. What comes to my mind right now too is being a singer and songwriter, and then choosing to share my personal story was very difficult for me, because I was like, nobody's gonna want to hear this shit, because it's like, it's too much, it's so personal, and like, I don't know, I just want people to listen to my music and then, go on about their day. But I was just a little bit concerned, like, if I'm putting this out there on my socials, is anyone gonna want to hear this, or they just want to hear me sing, or watch a music video or something. But I realized that I had the opportunity to connect with much more people. And then there were listeners that I got a chance to speak with that had experienced similar experiences. So yeah, that's supportive of my mental health.
Well, all those. Mental health, I'm going to be honest, is a tough one for me to talk about because I feel both like my life was saved by the mental health care industry, and also a lot of times completely failed by the mental health care industry. And my husband's a therapist, so but not failed by him. I seem to fall into categories of things that are like less than 1% of affecting the population less than 1% of the time. So it's hard to find a community when you are one of those people who go through something that like, I've always had pretty general anxiety, and that's been manageable through my whole life. But my pregnancy, that's where let's just start at 9 years old. I was less than 1% of the population. I have an extra spare rib here that also sent me to the hospital. And so just like weird stuff. But hyperemesis gravidarum, which is what I had when I was pregnant all 3 times, it affects a small percentage of people. And it is basically, you have a gene in your body that causes you to react to your own hormones. And in my case, I was sick all the time and losing a ton of weight during pregnancy. And I and it reminds me of how like the loud and proud now everybody is about their thing. Like I feel like everybody starts talking about the things that I went through right after I went through them. So like hyperemesis is like Amy Schumer's the spokesperson now. Like that, like
Kate Middleton.
yeah, Kate Middleton. Yeah, like so many people that I was like, where am I? That affects your hormones, and your hormones can affect your mood, and obviously. And I did not know. I mean, I was pregnant, so you also have that other good hormone coming in that is kind of balancing it out. But when I weaned my daughter, or I should say, when my daughter weaned from me, there was no decision on my part. She was just done, and so my hormones just dropped, and everything one day was fine, and the next day everything was horrible. And that there was no conscious choice on my end to like go through this. So I got help, and I was able to get help, but every time since then that I have gone through any hormonal shift at all, it's affected anxiety, and sometimes in the worst possible ways. So I'm learning that now, but along the way, no one ever said until after that could be connected to hormones in some way. And I feel frustrated that it seems so clear to me now that like, perimenopause, nursing, any of those things could be tied into your mental health. So I just like everything everybody said here. I would love to have had a community. There wasn't in that time. I would have loved to have a book. There wasn't in that way. And I wasn't reading anything. I was just crying and sleeping. But I think that anything you can do, any of the things that any of you, I always tell I work in fitness, and I'm like, motion changes emotion. There is no way around that. You do walk around the block, you are going to feel better than you did before you got up and walked around the block, even if that was for 5 minutes. So I am a firm believer in all of those things. And when there isn't somebody for you, just keep screaming until you find that person, because there will be somewhere.
So I have a little party trick that in this feeling like nobody else had been through what I was going through, and I was completely blindsided by it. I theoretically knew that miscarriages, of course, happened. I was absolutely not thinking it was going to happen to me. And I did not know of other people who had had miscarriages. I knew it was out there, and it was so quietly not talked about. So I started this party trick for myself, and I still do it to this day, which is to try to drop when I had a miscarriage in totally polite, normal conversation. And it's just because it's a relevant, minor detail of the story. I'm not, what my goal is to not stop the conversation, to not have people say, I'm so sorry you went through that. I didn't know that about you. I wanted a part of the conversation, because the reason I don't remember what you were working on at that time is because I was completely in my own dark hole because of one of my miscarriages. Not because I now want to talk about my miscarriage. I just want it out there that this is something that people are having all the time. And I have a few little facts from the Mayo Clinic that 1 in 3 40-year-old women has experienced a miscarriage. At age 35, you have a 20% risk of a miscarriage. And at age 45, it ranges from 57 to 80% risk. So it's a very, very common, especially as we, as a society, start having children later and later. It is just happening all the time, and I just want it out there. I now obviously have a party trick of talking about taking hormonal replacement therapy. So I recommend it as a fun little.
You should try to fit them all into one.
Yeah,
That would be a real trick.
Watch the person walk
Yes.
away.
Right.
I also actually really try with older. This sounds weird, but with like older generation men to be like, this is totally normal to talk
Yes.
about. I know you know about this. I know you have a wife. And just that it's okay to have it be a part of the conversation. I even found myself to my kids wondering whether I should tell them what I was going to do tonight. What?
Mhm.
I mean, that's like, they should know. I'm like, I don't even know if they know I've had 3 miscarriages. These are things that they should grow up knowing. This isn't something I shouldn't be sharing with them. Anyway, that's my little soapbox. But one topic that we were saying we did want to bring up was healthcare during this experience. Health insurance, just healthcare in general. If anyone, I know working in the healthcare industry, I know you have a lot to share, but if I want to specifically get to that, but everyone, if you can share experiences.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Nope.
Well, there's a lot in government right now going on with health insurance, specifically in California. We are not a mandated state for IVF. There are, I forget the number, but I think there are 11 to 14 other states that the employers are mandated to pay for IVF. In California, I believe Gavin Newsom just signed a bill just to get it moving, in a sense. We're not get it moving for us to become a mandated
Can I
state.
say one thing?
Yes.
The employer is not required to pay for IVF. They are required to give you an option to get insurance that covers it, which doesn't mean the employer is necessarily paying for it.
Correct.
That's Correct. That's how they get you.
Yeah. So, just in my experience, like when I've started working at a position, usually I'll go through there and see like, okay, do they cover? Most of the time they do not. I haven't been with an employer yet that does. But I've asked HR about it, and they're like, I think so, or something like that, or oh, have you tried this? Or look here. And then I look and it's like, it clearly says IVF, like no. IVF equals no. That's basically what it says in there. But what's interesting about that is that there's not a whole lot of knowledge that the employers have around it. And unfortunately, it's up to us to really educate them. And that's kind of what I've been doing in the space that I'm in now is when I ask about it, I give information, I give tools, and I'm pretty sure the benefits representative is sick of me by now because I send her stuff like monthly. But I'm giving her this information because there's going to be someone that's going to come after me. And like statistically, 1 in 8 couples are experiencing fertility issues, and it's increasing. I want to do some research on what that is about, but I have some speculation. It's environmental. It's about the clothing we wear, the food we're eating. It's contributing to women dealing with fertility issues. But I've been a part of an advocacy group that is marching to Sacramento to make sure that this bill goes forward, and I'm really looking forward to that. But I love that this is a conversation. It seems like it's taking too long. Because these issues are not brand new. You know what I mean? It's been going on for.
Amber Alert.
No, you're good. It's everyone. It's everyone.
It's anyone missing an 81-year-old? You know this 81-year-old.
You're good. But yeah, it's not brand new. So we've been experiencing these things for a very long time. But it does take a village. It takes all of us to just keep having these conversations, keep having events like this, keep writing books, getting that information out there. Yeah.
This is my soapbox, so I'm going to try not to get on it because I could talk about healthcare and IVF for days. It is so infuriating.
Yes.
Sometimes they code this is not universal to health. This is universal to all healthcare. It's not just IVF, but I would have a procedure done at my fertility doctor, not covered. I'd have the same procedure done at an OBGYN, covered. Depends on how they code it, which office it goes to. Don't get me started. But Gavin Newsom did sign a bill, which is supposed to come into effect in July of this year. The thing about mandated coverage that's very tricky is a state that has mandated coverage, it makes you think you're going to have IVF covered, and it's not what it actually means. And along with everything else that comes with more government, there's more red tape, there's more bureaucracy, there's longer waiting times for the doctor's appointments because they have to get clearance from your insurance to make sure that, like, all these hoops you have to jump through. And when you're going through infertility, back to this grief that you're experiencing every day, you add to it this full-time job of managing the business side of it and the insurance side of it. And it is just so depressing. I do want to share one very happy, positive story that one of my doctors did for me. And this also speaks to why you have to really know what you're looking for in terms of a doctor. I ended up choosing my first doctor, and I ultimately left him. He did nothing wrong. I just had been through 4 cycles with him and needed to move on. But he was like a one-man operation. So it was his clinic, his setting it up. He'd been like a pioneer in fertility medicine and all these things. Lovely man, Sam Najmabadi, if anybody knows him. It never occurred to me after my first round of IVF that it wouldn't work. It did. You're like, you do IVF, then you get the baby, and then you just move on. So my first round didn't work, and my second round didn't work, and then my third round finally worked. And it didn't occur to me at that point that I could maybe lose it because it was a perfectly tested embryo. What do you mean? How could I possibly lose it? It makes no sense. So we were deep into financial debt at this point, and emotional debt and physical, I mean, everything. We were in like the real shits. I would say the lowest low of my marriage with my husband was the worst time. And then we have this miscarriage, and it was like a $4,700 procedure that I needed to have done that I didn't think I was going to need to have done at all, let alone have a bill for it. You're going to charge me almost $5,000 for a pregnancy that I wanted and I'm not allowed to keep. Like it something didn't make sense. And I was just so distraught. And my doctor, because it was just him and he didn't have to deal with anybody else, took the bill and ripped it in half and ripped it in quarters and shredded it and was like, let's not even think about this. Let's just move on to the next round. And to that, I tell that story all the time because it's so rare. And I'm not like anti-government or conspiracy theory. I do love a good conspiracy theory, but I don't believe that healthcare is a conspiracy theory. We could debate that forever, but you know, there's something so simple about the old days when you could walk to a doctor and get what you needed and have him make a decision, and he was like your family person. And I'm still to this day so moved that he did that. So I just want to share one positive bit of healthcare.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I work at UCLA, so it's like a big bureaucracy. The only thing I would want to add to what everyone has shared is just to talk to people for referrals.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of the people that I work with know good providers and caring providers, and you know, like everyone has said, you want to be working with someone who's caring and who's smart, because these providers are, you know, human beings who, you know, some of them are good and some of them are all right, and you know, you want to be working with the really good ones, and you know, get referrals from people that you trust and that you think are smart, that can refer you to other people that they think are smart. And so I guess that would be my recommendation. And just because people were talking about perimenopause and hormones, I'll just say at UCLA we have the Women's Life Clinic, and they take insurance, and a lot of different insurances at least. And they have reproductive psychiatrists over there for anyone who wants to see a psychiatrist. And there's a menopause clinic as well. So I'll just throw that out there.
Woo!
Yeah, I mean, I work at UCLA, and you know, my insurance is, you know, nothing to brag about.
Yeah.
So complicated.
Should we open it up
can we open up to questions or?
Oh, I'm sorry. In order to.
Sorry, we're done.
I'm so sorry. It's just that we're really running out of time because we have to close the store at like 9. But I want to give you enough time to sign your book and to give you that time. And if you have questions, please ask them. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for coming. I also just want to say, just a shout out to a special guest, Sam here. Sam is also one of us who've experienced a lot and had a podcast that I just love to say, IVFU. She will be working with me again in the future as well. She will bring some pink hair up here. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to share one topic. We had our son, it took 8 years, 10 embryo transfers, which all failed, and eventually we did egg donation and surrogacy. So I'm very experienced in third-party reproduction, and that's a big piece of IVFU, as well as FOST-adopt, all the different versions of everything. However, that was something that just wasn't touched on here, so
Yeah.
It's in the book.
it's in the book.
Yes.
And in fact, we were just talking before this about my son goes to West Hollywood Elementary. His best friend is from an egg donor surrogate. Another boy in his class is from an egg donor surrogate.
Wow.
One boy has 2 dads. One boy has 1 dad. You know, we are 2 of us, male, female. So it's every version. But anyway, I just wanted to raise that as a thing to think about.
Good point.
That's great.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
At UCLA, I'm like, we need more menopause clinics, please.
Maybe we can
Drink,
call and-
eat, and get out.